What does it take to measure reionization with fast radio bursts? Last week, I talked a little bit about fast radio bursts. They are exactly what they sound like. People aren't 100% sure where they're coming from, but whatever they are, their observational signature is exactly what it sounds like, a fast burst of radio radiation. So they don't last very long. They're in radio frequencies, and we're not 100% sure what they are, but that's what they look like when we measure them. So as the radio light travels from some distant galaxy to us, it interacts with the electrons, the free electrons in the universe, and that disperses it because different radio frequencies will interact more or less with the free electrons, and therefore the burst gets spread out with, I think, the higher frequencies arriving first and the lower frequencies arriving later. So by measuring this time delay between the high frequencies and the low frequencies, you're able to know sort of how far it's traveled. Of course, you also have to know how many free electrons there are in things. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to go into that calculation. What this paper is talking about is a thing called reionization, which is this concept related to the formation of those free electrons. So if you remember me talking about the cosmic microwave background, hopefully not summoning Deanna back, hopefully she can have a nice sleep. Back then, before the cosmic microwave background, the universe was hot enough that you had lots and lots of free electrons, lots and lots of free protons. And as the universe cools, eventually it's cold enough that neutral hydrogen becomes stable. All the electrons bind to the protons and you get neutral hydrogen. From that point onwards, the universe is neutral. All the hydrogen is bound. All the protons have an electron binding to them. Eventually, those stars start to form. And when stars form, they emit very powerful radiation again. And all of this sort of free hydrogen floating around in the universe is getting bombarded with this light from stars. And eventually the electrons get knocked off it again. And that's happened. And now we live in a universe where there is very, very little neutral hydrogen floating around because all of the electrons have been knocked out by light from stars. But that happened at some particular point, and when it happened is actually really important for certain cosmological observations, in particular our observations of the CMB, because once you've got free electrons, little bits of the CMB can start interacting with those electrons again and change it. So when this happens is really important. Now, people who've been paying a lot of attention might have started to think, from what Sean's told me about fast radio bursts and what he's just told me about reionization, I think I can see why they're useful. So if you can get fast radio bursts coming from galaxies that are far enough away that when the radio burst was emitted, the universe was still neutral, and then later on it got reionized, and then the burst started getting dispersed, you can start to plot, like I measured this fast radio burst at this redshift, this one at this redshift, this one at this redshift, this one at this redshift, and see exactly when this dispersion starts. And from that, you would then be able to measure when this reionization happens. So that's what they're talking about. It hasn't been done because there's 6 fast radio bursts that we know where the galaxies are from, and these redshifts are not large enough. Redshift meaning Doppler shift, meaning a proxy for distance and age of the universe.